Okay, guys, it's 10 o'clock here in Singapore. I'm with my guest host, Rob Cheney, as always. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
No problem, mate. My
Today,
favourite part of the week.
do you know what? It goes so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's
So-
just it's the most fun chatting golf every week with you and another legend we have on the show today.
yeah, I'm looking forward to today's session. We've got Zane Scotland. Thanks for joining us, Zane.
Thanks for having me on. I'm following the great Billy Irvine, aren't I? So I'm up against it this week.
So, for
I've
those of
got
you who
no
don't
guitar.
know,
There's no guitars or nothing this week,
I was going
boys.
to say, have you got piano, guitar? We've had. Can you sing?
Nah, I've got none of that. No, sorry
Oh,
guys.
no talent, just golf.
Sorry. No,
So,
nothing.
guys out there, if you don't know, Zane is a tour professional, former tour professional on the European Tour. He's played Challenge Tour. He's played every tour, you name it. He's played in the Open twice, I believe. He's the
Yep.
youngest ever player to qualify for the Open. Is that still stand?
Yeah, youngest qualifier. Yeah,
Longest
a lot of
qualifier.
people have been exempt. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, longest qualifier. You were 16, is that right?
yeah, it's a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. I sort of remember.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I'm a year or two younger than you, and I remember around that time I was a junior golfer myself, and I remember when you qualified for the Open, and that was unbelievable, mate. So obviously,
Yeah, and for me
place
it
to
was
start,
carried
really.
on from it was for me. It was probably inspired by Justin Rose. Justin the year before had that
That's
great
right.
finish
Yeah,
at Birkdale, and I think he kind of I'd known Justin through England coaching, and he was from Hampshire, from Surrey, a little bit, and he just kind of opened that door. I guess it was a bit of the 4 minute mile sort of thing. Like you see
yeah,
someone else do it, you think, especially at that age, you don't have all the scar tissue, and you just think that's what you're supposed to do, and then you just follow in the footsteps.
yeah.
And now when I look back, I think, oh, that was actually quite something. But
Oh,
at the
mate, it's an
time,
unbelievable stat, really. To
at,
16 years old.
at the time, a bit of naivety, really. You just think that's life.
Yeah,
This is what you're supposed to do. Having 5 years into having started a golf career,
yeah.
to being on the range of the Open Championship, it's actually quite something. But at the time, it was just watched it on telly. That's what you're supposed to do.
So you
I wish you
started
could have that
golf at
back.
11 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, so 11 years old. My dad started at the same sort of time, so we had the whole golf bug thing, and we would go to the range as many nights as possible, chipping in the back garden every single day. I played 9 holes before school in the summer,
Wow.
and we'd watch the David Ledbetter videos, the long game, short game, taken to the course.
Yeah.
Over and over. If golf wasn't on the television, watching, there was that guy he had on who was like his student, who was apparently like a 16, 18 handicap, and he literally had duff a 3-wood, and Dave would give him a quick tip, and then all of a sudden it was quite apparent to see he was actually probably a scratch golfer. He hit this big high draw in one shot. Now coaching, it doesn't quite work like that, but yeah.
Well, it's amazing how much it's changed, right? You going back 20 years ago when we were all growing up as junior golfers, you had the DVDs the videotapes probably then back in those days.
VHS.
And now obviously we got everyone's on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, every social media swings. There's so much advice out there, so it's almost on the other way, isn't it? There's almost too much advice. So
there's
that's why
probably
it's great.
too much. It's probably too much advice, but I think that the info's gotten so much better. I think I don't know what you guys think, but I think the golfing world is as much argument as there is. There's probably more agreement now.
It's getting that way.
Via like Golfing Machine. Mac did his thing, Stack and Tilt. There's much more agreement now on what is the better ways of doing it, or the closer, the better journey to get into good golf.
I think it's a lot to do with technology, right? Trackmans and GC quads and all the rest of it that measure club data. I think that's really a big part of it. I know even going back 10 years ago, the ball flight laws weren't agreed upon, and that's obviously changed. And now with the technology, it's something to back it up. And that's what I like about the stack and tilt system, is being part of a network and like-minded golf coaches. There's an answer to everything, and I think that's quite important.
Yeah, definitely. There's the voodoo part of golf has kind of gone now, isn't it? There's no wagering magic wand anymore. It's like if you say something, you need to be able to back it up with some sort of numbers or facts. And you guys probably see it. You're actually getting recreational golfers actually know their numbers. They know what the
Yeah.
TrackMan numbers mean. They know what a D plane means, that sort of stuff. I think 5 years ago, if you said D plane, you know, people would have been like, "Oh no, I don't want to hear it." Whereas now it's a prerequisite of a 15 handicap golfer, isn't it, to understand it?
Yeah, so I think that's a quite good point. So as a junior, Zane, you obviously at winding back to 16 again. Where were you playing golf at the time?
So I was playing golf at 16 years old. I was playing golf in Surrey. Woodcote Park was my golf club.
Yeah.
We didn't really have a practice ground. We had a very thin practice ground, which you went on once every 2 weeks with your own balls.
Yeah.
And then you would lose a few balls and decide I want to go out on the golf course. And literally, so I kind of grew up playing like 3 club challenges, 1 club challenges in the evenings, putting comps galore, and surrounded by other good young players, really. And then that just kind of, I kind of got to scratch by about 15 years old. And then during that summer, when I qualified for the Open at 16, I kind of broken through a bit of a barrier and got into +2, and I was, golf was relatively easy, at that time. And I know Tiger Woods had just come onto the scene, so you just kind of copy whether he did, really, big wide short swing and hit it further. And I think an up distance, because he was the person that brought this 300 yards drive, being a normal drive, into play. And so I probably found like 20 or 30 yards just because this guy hit it further. So you would go to the golf course the next day and just try and just smash drives. And and my game, I went for kind of a scratch to a +2. But I had, but off the back of having played 1 club challenge and 3 club challenges, I had a short game and had some shot making ability.
Yeah, I think that's
quite
kind
of carried me through. Yeah, and and I had some good information, good advice from some people to say, go and play as many different golf courses, as many competitions as you can.
Yeah,
and it paid back.
Were you technical as a kid, or did you just go out and play?
No, I just went out and play. I played pretty much like if I hit a few shots before in the morning, and the ball was going left, I would go and aim right. And if I was hitting it to the right on the range or on a few shots early on in the round, actually, I didn't really warm up very often. Pretty much where the first 2 tee shots just painted a picture of where I went for the rest of the day. That was it, really. That's how. Just somehow found a way to get the ball around the golf course without thinking about it too much.
I think that's quite a good point.
I had a coach. Go on.
No, I was just talking about when you said about where you turned up on the day and it went left or went right. I think that's quite a good point. Everyone tends to have sort of a shot pattern, and no one really should aim straight. We did a seminar a few weeks ago with Golf Tech, and we were talking about the shot patterns and how no real golfer aims at the target. They aim in a direction that will sort of help with their ball flight. And I think that's quite important. A lot of people could learn from that, knowing what their pattern is, and even on the day, just turning up and just aiming in a certain area. Was always going to say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a coach at the time who was more into the mental side of things, and I stayed with him for 10 years, and I played a lot of good golf under him, but I had no understanding of my golf swing whatsoever. I couldn't write. You could probably write on the back of a postage stamp with a paintbrush what I knew about the golf swing. It was all feel, But I guess one thing that I did have was that growing up, I would draw it a lot. And then as I went on, I kind of worked out how to hit like a bit of a aim left cut if I needed to down a tight hole. And that took the bad golf out, because if I got to a tight hole, a hole I didn't like, I could aim left and just nudge it into the fairway. And then that kind of progressed, really. And I went on a few years, kind of getting by. And I actually probably played some of my best golf, moving the ball left to right. But you know what? I didn't know how I did it. I just I would go through times when I would be great at moving the ball left to right. And when I think back now I know what I know, I would, when it was at its best, it was like a bit of a push fade. But when it was off, it was like a pull fade. But that was just me just randomly trying to manufacture the ball going left to right. And what I know, and I think what I know now is I can now move the ball right to left and left to right, but from the same model of swing from what I've learned, from being around guys like yourself and all the other stuff we know these days. But my coach then didn't know any of this technical stuff. It was amazing, really.
Did you stay with that coach for, you said 10 years, and then did you change coach, or did you just go out on your own and try and figure it out?
Yeah, so I kind of stayed with him for like 10 years, and I was mentally really good, and that was really his strong point was the mental side of things and being super focused and practice regimes, and he obviously gave me some decent direction, but I honestly can't remember the technical side of things that he told me. And at the end of that 10 years, I had got my tour card, but my game had gone off. I played at Wentworth in the PGA, and I literally had nothing. Like, my game was so far off, and it wasn't a mental thing because I knew that, I'm a good player and I got confidence and I could shot good scores. But I just had no golf swing to kind of back it up. And I really struggled at a tournament, which I was hoping to do well at, playing at Wentworth during the PGA Championship, which I'd been and watched as a kid and wanted to do so well so badly. And nothing.
So when was this, 2007, 2008, when you had your card, is that right?
Yeah, that would have been 2008, that one, that first time I played that. And and then I actually then went down a road of just hitting loads of balls, trying to find it in the dirt pretty much. Yeah. And I actually hit so many balls. I was just literally on the range that morning till night, and I ended up fracturing my wrist and put myself out for like a year, which, just guessing at stuff really. And yeah, it was kind of a bit of a tough time. And in that time, I kind of realized, look, I've gotten to this point now. I need to know what makes me play well, and I don't know what it is. Yeah. And I wasn't getting the answers from my coach quick enough. So that took me down the road of, a couple of coaches. Because when you change coach, you don't always find the right person straight away. Yeah. You've got to gel with that person. They've got to know what they're talking about. They've got to understand you. And then you've got to give them enough time. So it might be a couple of months, you find, so it doesn't always happen that way. And I went to see a coach who was involved in the Morad stuff, which was, completely opposite to what I'd ever experienced. And I was having a little bit of success. I was starting to hit the ball a little bit better, but it still seemed way too much for me. And then he invited me to go on to like the McAgrady golf school. Yeah. Like the first one I did, and it was like 3 days, and it was a bit of a mind-blowing thing, really. Like I'd never seen golf in that way, and there was just everything that it was the first time everything that was questioned, there was some form of answer for, which Matt gave, and it was amazing. But it was just so much information, and I couldn't process it very well, and it probably took me about 6 or 7 years to get some form of small grasp on what that was all about, because the information was great, but it was just kind of the way that it was like put together was it was just too all over the place for me. And golf became quite difficult, really. Just all of a sudden, from being a junior golfer, just seeing if the ball's going left, to aim right, to standing over the ball, getting all these neck tilts and this sort of stuff, and P1, P2, and it was just like a bit of a mess, really.
What sort of time period was that, Zane?
So that was 2009 that I went on the school. In hindsight, being on tour as a player, I think a lot of stuff was good. But in hindsight, what I would have done was go back to the coach who I was seeing at the time and just say, look, I don't want to know about it. I just want to hit this shot shape. And if I'm being really brutal, I don't even want to see it. I don't want to see my golf so much. But you just tell me what to do. During that time, and processed and done it over a long time. But hindsight is a beautiful thing, isn't it? And as golfers, we don't make very good decisions, do we? So we want it all now, and I'm not immune to that.
Yeah. So after you did the Morad Mac stuff, you went on to the Challenge Tour or the MENA Tour, is that right?
Yeah. So I was kind of in that time. I'd had change in the family situation, like we had a baby. That was kind of a tough year or two. To kind of get used to all that sort of stuff. And I struggled with a bit of injury, and I was playing a little bit of. I kind of off the back of my original injury where I fractured my wrist, I came back and didn't retain a full card off my medical. So I played a little bit of the main tour, then a bit of challenge tour, just dipping in and out really. And then the MENA tour came around, and I enjoyed playing in the Middle East because I'd had injuries. I'd had back injury and neck injury, and being in the heat really helped me. And I kind of got a bit of love back for the game again, probably from the back of winning tournaments. When you're playing well, you love the game, don't you? So I started to win some tournaments, and that kind of gave me a bit of a second wind with it, really, which was great. But then the back injury kind of got a little bit worse around 2015, 2016. Again, really, just not really understanding stuff like the stuff I understand now. I just look back at what I was doing or working on. I think, what was I thinking? But that it's life, and it's golfing life. And then that and then being on the MENA tour, I was obviously around some more players, and obviously, I was one of the first guys to go out of the tripod at one of these smaller mini tour events and be filming my swing and working on stuff. And then I was starting to play well. So then inevitably,
everyone started doing it.
Players around you are like, "Oh, what are you looking at there?" So you tell them, and they're like, "Oh, can you have a look at my swing? And what do you see?" And then that kind of happened. And then there was one young lad who was amateur golfer, 19, 20 years old, and had quite a nice move. And that happened on the range. He's like, "Oh, do you mind having a look at my swing?" So I put it on camera, and he goes, "Oh, what do you think?" I was like, "Oh, I think it's really good because I'm hitting it right. Would you do this and this?" And I was like, "Nah, no chance. That's like the last thing I would do. That's probably the best part of your swing. I wouldn't change that bit. I'd do this." And he went out and he played quite well. And then he started to climb up the world ranking, amateur world rankings. Over about 5 or 6 weeks, he kind of went from I think 1400 up to top 400 in the world. And then when we came home after that stint in the Middle East, we went out and played golf. And when we were playing, he said, "Look, I was wondering, would you be my proper coach?" And I was thinking, I'm supposed to start coaching in about another 10, 15 years. So I wasn't really supposed to do it now. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And interestingly enough, the coach that he would work with, he was hitting the ball to the right. And and at that time, and he has a really stable club face. So he exits really left really easily with a stable club face.
Yeah.
But he just got a bit under now and again. And the coach that he was working at the time just told him just to feel like you roll your hands a bit. And I was just like, "Are you joking?" He got his great move, and to stop it going right, just roll your hands. It's like, what is this, 1983 or something? Watching Caddyshack. So just just started to put in a bit of the system that we use now.
Yeah.
Of okay, let's get it. The arms are a bit up on the way back, a bit high, so you're having to right side bend and pull down, get this bit stuck under before you turn, so you hit the shots high to the right. So how about we feel like we swing in a bit more on the way back? And he's like, "What do you mean by hitting it right? Swing in a bit more on the way back, lower the arms,
keep on the
a
grid,
bit of pressure under the armpits, stay on the grid, and then turn onto it. Boom, just hitting these balls 2-yard draws, like the holy grail of golf, really."
So your first student was one of the best amateurs in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he ended up, he kind of soared and ended up getting in. He got to about number 8 in the amateur world rankings just before he turned pro, sort of thing. But you know what? It's good and bad, isn't it? Because on one hand, he's already a good golfer, so he just needs tweaking. But on the other hand, he's one of the hardest. He's got a fantastic golf swing. One of the other parts is he's one of the hardest people to work with because he just wanted to hit it dead straight. And we'll go out and we'll watch him hit shots. And I've been a decent player, and he'll be hitting shots, and I'll be thinking, "That's really good." Every ball 10, literally not hitting outside 15 feet. And then after about 10, 12 shots, "Yeah, but they're all going left." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're all going 12 feet left from 190 yards. It's nothing." But he has to hit it. But it's always what way do you want to hit it? He goes, "Oh, I want to hit it straight." And you're just like, why do you have to pick the hard one?
So do you use TrackMan, or what would you use at that time?
So I started off using TrackMan. When I was playing, I had a TrackMan and used it all in the wrong way. Just looked at club data all the time. Didn't really know what I was looking at. Didn't understand swing direction and how that then related to the grid and shot shape. And then I sold it, and then I bought another one when I started coaching, and didn't use the club data at all. Just used it all for tests and ball data and how far the ball's going. And then now I use the quad, which I think is a really good coaching tool because the club data is so accurate. We still use a TrackMan a little bit, but the quad's been the main one. Just for club data, I think the quad gives you the best numbers.
I've done a little testing on
the
that.
golf clubs.
I think obviously when you can see the face with the quad, I think that makes a big difference. The strike location, the lie angle, and stuff like that. I think we use quad, but we're indoors. I guess it's different. I know since working outdoors in the past, TrackMan's obviously great with the radar, but I think the quad is indoor for
when we put the two up against each other. I don't know if you found this. Like, the only thing I noticed was that when a lot of numbers are similar, but when there's a miss hit, the quad seemed to still register similar numbers that had been registering up to that point. Yeah. And the TrackMan, the club numbers would go way out. That was the main difference I noticed.
Yeah, I've only done one test on this, and this was indoors, and I found exactly the same thing. But it was indoors, so it's probably the best way to test it. No, I think the quad is absolutely awesome. So at the moment, Zane, so you're that was sort of your journey into coaching, right? You started working with an amateur golfer. How did you get into stack and tilt?
So obviously for me, my journey started with getting into the golf, finding out about the golf swing via the Morad system, and then then it obviously became quite apparent that there was this like magic yellow book called the Golfing Machine, which I picked up and then put down quite quickly. And I thought, okay, that was the first time I thought, okay, there's a lot to this. I mean, we sat down with Mac at the first school, and he had a picture of it was a face-on P1 setup, and he said, okay, we're looking at it, and goes, what do you see? And you're thinking, I'm not too sure really. He's like, there's 21 different points of interest I'm seeing here. I'm like, what? Okay. So you work through all that, and that takes like 2 hours. And then he's like, right, then he flips down the line P1, and now he's like there's 19 different points of interest here. And I'm like, I'm just looking at where he lined up and, where his shoulders are, So that was, but that got my brain thinking, okay, there's a system to this, like how he's doing it, even though it was a complete mess. What felt like a mess to me. And then I guess once you're into that world, you kind of understand actually there's actually a lot of people who work this way, and there is actually a system. It's not all just about rhythm and low and slow. And then you obviously hear, I'd originally heard about stack and tilt, and kind of disregarded it quite quickly, because there was a bit of probably misunderstanding, which we've probably all experienced at some point from people that haven't been on the network training or met Andy. And then it kind of came back. I met Billy Irvin at the Surbiton Golf Studio. One of my friends, he owned it. Billy was a super nice guy. From chatting was having conversations with him, we were just talking. It was one of the first time I kind of found someone who was we're just talking in a similar sort of language, same terminology. Yeah. Talking about the golf swing. I was thinking, we're agreeing a lot here. Like, that's not supposed to happen. Normally, you get into arguments over golf swings. Yeah. It's like, okay, these things are really close. So we just spent a bit of time together. I would hit shots and he would talk about things, and I'd be like, I would like what he said. And I was like, yeah, these things are really similar here. And then I'd come across, also on social media, Andreas Kelly. And I was chatting to Andreas a little bit because I kind of knew him a little bit from growing up, and he played a bit of Challenge Tour. And you look at all his stuff, and his youngsters all swing it like unbelievable.
Awesome.
It's got swings to die for, haven't they? Makes you very jealous. And I was just chatting to him about things, and he was like super. And it was like, we're talking about similar sort of things here. We're agreeing on a lot of things, and also he knew some extra stuff. And I was like, that's interesting. And he said, look, there's a network training coming up in Sweden. I'd missed one in London. He said, look, there's network training coming up in Sweden, like I think in a week's time or something like that. Andy's coming over. You should come. And I was just like, I just booked it straight away. Like I was like, I can't not do this. So literally booked it, got the early flight to Sweden, rented a car, drove for like a couple of hours, had a flight booked back that evening, went to a room,
Wow.
full of people I didn't know who they were. I knew Andreas, didn't know anybody else. Some quite mean looking characters, but when you get to know them, they're very nice people.
Did you meet TK?
Met TK, that's exactly what I'm talking about. His name is super nice guy, and I guess and I don't know if Andy was aware, he was some sort of aware I was coming, and I was quite like taken aback. He was just super nice, he welcomed me, made a point to come and say hi and thanks for being there and so forth, and and then he obviously set on about his way of delivering the system and talking about how it came to the fore, and I was just super impressed by the way that it was all laid out, and it was how it was he made it so usable, and how there was a step-by-step process to how you start to lay things out and start to see the golf swing, and how you measure the golf swing, and what really stood out was, yes, there's like a model, like okay, this is where we start to measure it from.
Yeah.
But it was like you didn't have to go all in on everything. It was just like, here, this is how we're gonna see the model. This is the golfer. And then what pieces can we put in? And it might only be one small piece to make their life a little bit easier. And I was like, okay, I like this. And I think when he went through the fundamentals, that was one thing that really got me, was like, okay, was like, strike, like curve. And I was like thinking, that makes, okay, this is starting to make sense now. Like, can I hit it far enough? Can I curve it? Can I control the curve? And can I strike it? Okay, that makes sense. And then because all these things to do with like probably question I had in my head about, setup, the old gas like grip, alignment, stance, posture, that sort of stuff. And then I was like thinking, but I think intuitively, that they're all over the place, don't you? That everyone grips it differently, or I'd experienced players that gripped it so differently, away from what would be like conventional, or, I played with someone like Thomas Aiken, who would aim miles left. I played with him, he shot 67 at London Club, but he would aim like 50 yards left and hit this big high slice thing. And thinking, but if he went to a PGA professional and was taken from that book, they would change everything in his golf swing. But this guy's out there making loads of money, and he's, beating me. Like, that makes sense. So when Andy kind of explained those, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That this is actually putting things in place, which I would think things you can use. And things we spoke about today, on that day, I just kind of got the feeling we're going to have the same conversation in 5-10 years time, and he's going to give me very, very similar answers. Like these, it's going to be refined and gotten better, but it's just not just making stuff up. This,
I think talking.
It was really good.
I've been fortunate to attend a number of Andy's presentations, and I know Rob has attended a lot more than I have, and it has evolved definitely. He's over the time, but the general message is always the same, but certainly does add bits in, and it does evolve. Would you agree, Rob?
Definitely, yeah. I was sort of sitting there listening to Zane. I was sort of like mesmerized by his conversation, because I'm nodding my head and I'm like, yeah. I did a podcast this week with a guy in Australia called Jake Colleen, and he asked me all about stack and tilt, and I'm hearing myself when Zane's answering those questions. Like I had my epiphany with James Ridyard, where he's in the bay with me at Bedford, and he's like, here's the fundamentals. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I mean, why would you not measure a golfer based on those dynamic fundamentals? Why would you ever think about telling someone to have a perfect grip, whatever that might be? And it just made so much sense. So yeah, I'm sitting here listening to Zane's story, and I think we've probably got similar stories as golfers and as instructors. Our system that we were using just wasn't good enough. And then when you meet Andy, it's like, oh my God, this guy understands this thing inside out, back to front. And it's so eye-opening when you hear it from someone who's so well-versed and has it so well organized in his head and understands how all these things fit together. So I couldn't agree more. I mean, attending network training is a minimum prerequisite for any golf instructor. Even if you only manage to get to one, right, you've got to go and spend a day with Andy Plummer. If you've not done it, you are missing out in a big way.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rob. Couldn't have said that better myself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen and spent time with lots and lots of coaches, and for me, in terms of like the whole kind of package, in terms of knowledge and how to deliver it in the same stuff in very different ways, and educate all at the same time. Like, he's by far and away the best. There's other coaches who can, don't get me wrong, there's other coaches who I've worked with who they just know how to get you to play well tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then the education part may be lacking, but they get you to do something to make you feel better about yourself, to make you hit better shots. I get that, but then it doesn't necessarily last. You almost need that guy next to you the whole time. But at the time that fits, that does tick a box. But what I find,
I think you work with a lot of really, really good players now, Zane, and I think your understanding of the grid now would allow you to do that lesson as well, wouldn't it? On the night before a tournament, if someone starts overdrawing the ball, you're not going to start changing their golf swing the night before a tournament. You're just going to make an adjustment on the grid at P1, and they're going to be good to go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that also probably resonated with me as a player, was that was having that piece, understanding the grid has been a bit of a revelation, really. I think you kind of intuitively know it, but the more and more you understand it, the more you can start to measure what you're doing, and also you can change your own golf. You can change your own ball flight very quickly, and coaching with players, as you say, yes, like I'm not going to make a swing change to a player. It's not possible to have a new swing tomorrow morning, but you can have a new setup which can give you a different shape of ball flight. Yeah. And that's one thing you can implement straight away, and you need to know that straight away. And I think that was another part I kind of got from Andy, was like, you had this guy who could do all these like amazing drawings, and talk about degrees and numbers and all these educational parts that you probably have to go and study to make sure you know. And the other part of it was that that he would, on the night before the first round of the tournament, he'd also be a great guy to go to, because he could give you something to do on the grid to make you change your ball flight like tomorrow, which I always found, like with some other instructors, you think they really know their stuff, but God, I wouldn't want that guy on a Wednesday night. Like, I need, I'm not sure he's going to go speak to, but just like, that's what like really impressed me, was like, okay. And then he was also able to, he could do it, and then he could also teach me how to start looking at the grid, use the grid for the outcome that I want for the player that I'm working with. And then also, I think the grid's a really good point, actually, when working with the good players and poor players. But sometimes some good players have such good golf swings, and you get so used to watching them, you're thinking it's hard to see much wrong here when someone's got such a good golf swing. But then when you start to, like, in your mind's eye, see the grid, you can actually start to see, like, that's the small piece where he's getting off. We can just put that back there. Obviously, with some players who have like a really funky swing, like, it's very easy to see that straight away, isn't it? It's very easy to see, like, yeah, the guy's taking his arms up or whatever it is. But the grid has really come into play for me to be able to look at a golf swing of good players and notice, okay, actually, if we're talking about really this player is like has a really conventional move, and actually working as close to grid as possible is his best way of like longevity. And so you can see when they start to drift off a little bit. And without that, I think it would be really hard. I think I would actually be trying to find new pieces all the time.
With the players you work with, Zane, do you have a grid set out, or do you explain it to them, or how would you go about it in a coaching environment?
Yeah, I guess, weird enough, I guess my own like coaching system, which has probably come from being around Andy, is like when I do start working with a new good player, in the first session, I actually now just find myself going, look, explaining the grid, putting the sticks out, how I understand it, and I normally use a line which I completely believe in. It's true. It's like, if someone had taught me this when I was 14 years old, I wouldn't have hit half as many balls, and I wouldn't have seen half as many coaches that I've seen. So yeah, and so it's a prerequisite of anyone that I work with. I have to have some understanding of the grid, not necessarily to swing it perfectly on the grid, but to know how to measure their own golf swing against it, to know if they're doing something not enough or too much, if that makes sense. And if they may hit like a swooping draw, or they may hit like a 15-yard cut, but to know how that looks on the grid, to make sure they can repeat that. Otherwise, your setup can change all the time, which essentially end up changing your whole golf swing. So using the grid is a bit of a prerequisite now to any player I work with. But you know what I find, even guys that I've worked with for a long time, they still want to have to re-explain things to them. And when you guys probably get it, you just look at the grid and that's golf. If you send over a shot, you can like almost see the grid. And that's how it works. And sometimes you forget that not everybody just knows the stuff that in your head. Even good players, you have to keep repeating it to them.
That's a good point about the grid. I asked Mike Bennett. I caddied for him a few years ago, and I asked him what did he see when he set up to the golf ball, and he said that he didn't see the grass. He saw a grid, and that's what you could see. You could sit up to the ball, and you saw that grid on that ball. He didn't really look at the target. He just kind of set up in his mind where he was in relationship to the target on the grid, and that's what he used to see. And I think that's quite important. We Golf Tech, we set up a grid in every bay. We have them drawn out in pen or in tee claws and draw out the grid, and we get people to practice with it as well. I think the more times you see it subconsciously or consciously, it's there and you can follow those lines. And I think it's amazing, really, the amount of people we've taught that just are blown away by it, really, once they see it for the first time. Even, like you say, good players as well. It's never been explained to them in that way, which is great. The way Andy
It really hasn't. It really hasn't. The amount of good players that come in, they have no clue how it works. And now I'm like, when they come in, I'm a little bit like, come on, mate, you should know this. But then, I'm being honest, I think, 10 years ago, I didn't know that either. Yeah. But when they come in, I'm just like, how can you not know this? But, it's so important. I tend to use like the orange sticks. So then I'll just say to like people like that, we'll put the orange sticks out. So when you get on the golf course, I want you to be able to see this all the orange sticks where they are, and use those bits. But it is amazing.
Andy talks about in the having the sticks almost they're out the ground sticks for the hand path, and how just visualize that in his mind as he was practicing for many years, because that was his biggest problem, was his arms sort of lifting. And it was like, I just need to walk around with those sticks in my head. They're always there. I can't lift my arms. I have to keep them under. There's actually an interesting question just popped up there from Megan. I'll grab it because it's talking about the grid. How come the grid is not mentioned in the Stack and Tilt book? Is there a website? I do know that there is a new book being worked on, and I know it's being all about the grid. So it's coming. Okay, I know for sure that's being worked on.
I think it's mentioned in the book. I'm sure it is.
I think there's a little bit in there.
Yeah, but not to the detail where we've drawn out the lines. There's a picture in there, I think, of Mike with a driver, and there's some paint on the ground, and sort of there's a little reference to it, but it's not in sort of massive sort of detail. So, Zane, is there any tour players you work with at the moment?
So I reckon we've probably got, I was trying to count the other day, probably between 15 and 20 pros, all at some level from late amateur, trying to make it. We had one guy last year, went from kind of challenge tour, struggling a little bit to actually getting his card, which was fun to go through that journey. I guess the next stage really is, for me, it's always been about like go on the journey to have someone to get there. I've never really been that driven by like trying to just go out on tour and try and pick up a player. Because I think, it's almost easy to do that, because the guys on the tour are they're all looking for something new or something little secret. And if there's someone just has to be standing around and can you have a look, you'd be amazed at what some top players, they'll listen to anything without questioning it. And it's quite surprising. Maybe I don't think I really did it too much. I didn't really drift around, but it's actually quite shocking, really. And it's too easy a job to just go and stand at the back of the range and someone asks you a question and away you go. My whole goal is to take some young players and take them right through that process of getting them to the tour and educate them, and so that when they're out there, they can be struggling with their own game a little bit, and then put the grid out and go, like, I'm trying to find a shot for tomorrow, not be on complete panic stations. And when they're playing well, know exactly why they're playing well. And one thing I think is quite interesting was quite a few coaches have kind of said about, a lot of guys hitting this fade now on tour, moving the ball left to right. Good players move it left to right. But actually, you know what? I think now there's more players that move it right to left now via better understanding of the golf swing than there has been for a long time. I don't think there's always going to be people who fade it and draw it. But I think where coaching's getting better via all these outlets, and I think that have really coming to the fore now, and understanding the ball flight laws and that sort of stuff. I think there's more drawers now than ever before.
Well, the draw's built in, as we all know.
Exactly. Yeah. I think. I think I didn't know how to build in the draw before, so my draw became like a big high block cut or quick low left. But now I know how to build in the draw. It's it just makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, so I think a lot of
different to how I was taught to draw the ball. I remember that much. We're about the same age, Zane. I think you're a couple of years younger than me, maybe, but I think we were taught. Yeah, I grew up in the same era as you, with Faldo's, Nick, and the Ledbetter stuff was coming on the scene when I was a young golfer, watching all those videos that you were talking about. And drawing the golf ball back then was, rolling the wrists through impact and that twisting and rolling through impact.
You had to move off it, didn't you? You had to move off it, and then
you had to roll your wrists. Yeah, that's how
stay on your back foot and roll the hands.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Different now.
It's so different. Whereas now, actually, if someone wants to draw it, I would actually say, well, okay, you got to make sure you stay on it and you stay left to draw it.
Yeah. I think
that's that is one thing I would never have done 10, 15 years ago. 100% would have gone to the right to do it. It's mental.
Going back to the book, I think the first sentence in the book, or the first paragraph, mentions that if every golf book or instruction was to put your weight on the left, keep your weight forward and swing your hands in, we would have a lot of golfers that draw the golf ball. Whereas history tells us, and from our experience, that the majority of people that we work with, the higher handicappers anyway, tend to be slicers, because they've shifted to the right and they're swiping across it to try and make contact with the ball. So I think that hopefully will change one day. If more golfers start keeping their weight on the left, I think that will make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that from my understanding would be that you can kind of stay to the left, but when you turn, you can still feel like you're pressing into your right foot, but it doesn't necessarily mean you go over here. You can turn, stay right on it. Yeah. But then you can still feel like you're pressing you can feel at the top of your backswing. You can still feel you're pressing to your right. That's two different things. Essentially, yes, you want to get back onto your left foot very quickly. You can also hit shots where you do really stay on your left foot. That's the other part to it. But I think that for me was probably what I didn't understand at the beginning, was that, like, yes, you can turn and you can feel some pressure into your right foot, but that's different to like over here and over here. I can turn, keep everything left, but still, I'm still touching the ground with my right foot.
Yeah.
Once I understood that really, really helped.
I think what's evolved as well, if you watch the coaching business that we're in, you watch the language, how it's changed over the years. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have heard many people, or maybe 5, 6 years ago, you wouldn't hear many people talk about centered golf swings. Whereas nowadays, I think it's almost like that's the standard that most golf teachers are teaching. And then they'll say, but there's a pressure shift to the right now on the backswing. Whereas 10 years ago, it was, no, you have to shift to the right and then you shift back to the left. So it's evolving all the time. Like everyone is comfortable describing a backswing as centered now, and there's very few coaches who would stray away from that as being what they would prefer in their system, whatever that happens to be. And I think that's interesting because it never used to be like that. And now with the pressure shift conversation, there's this recentering, whatever that is, right? Where they kind of, the pressure shifts to the right on the backswing and then it recenters at P4 and then it's moving forward. I mean, I think the language that so many people are trying to use to circumnavigate the fact that they have to agree with 95% of what Andy and Mike wrote about more than 10 years ago, I think is kind of interesting and funny to watch from the sidelines. You know, I
totally agree. On that point, Zane, when you're working with good players or tour players, do they get put off if you mention stack and tilt, if they find out about that, or they start asking you questions? Has that happened where?
Yeah, I mean, I think like at the beginning there was always like a little bit of like, you know, everyone's a bit like, oh, you know, stack and tilt, that doesn't work. But to me, like stack and tilt isn't a swing. It's like it's a system, and it actually agrees with loads of stuff that I've been through. And what I find really odd is that if you know, having been on the Morag golf schools and also been you know, meeting Andy and being network training. Now, essentially, they're the same thing. Like you talk all the same language. It's the same model of golf swing. Yeah, it seems to be with the Morag McAgrady stuff. It's like some sort of secret society has got all the secrets, and everyone wants to be associated with it. And where second tilt's like, oh, that doesn't really work. But you know what? It's the same. It's the same stuff. Like Andy obviously another thing that I thought was great when I went to network training was Andy was very complimentary of Mac and said about how much he very gracious about it and how much he learned from him and that sort of stuff, you know, and he kind of evolved a different way of delivering it. So yeah, it's interesting you say, like, if you said to a player, you know, re-stay on your left, they go, oh yeah, but that's stack and tilt. And you say to a player, it would stay centered. Go, okay, yeah, do that. You're like, it's the same thing. Like, I mean, the way I do try and like mix in some of like the first coach that I used, who was very on the mental side of things. I try and mix in a bit of what I got from him, and then a little bit when I've been to some of the techniques, not necessarily technical techniques, but the way of delivering information, getting people to play well, that I would have got from a little bit from like Claude Harmon, for instance. So I feel like and then, you know, learn bits from Mac, and I've, you know, more recently I've got a lot from the way Andy delivers his stuff and what I've learned from that. And I tried to bring it all, you know, I like to think that I bring all of it together all the time. But yeah, it is really interesting how I find it really interesting that if you say use one term and then use another term, how some the first term people are like, oh no, I don't want to do that, and then use the other term, they're like, okay, I'm happy with that, and you're looking at going, it's exactly the same thing.
So we're just going to have a quick look at
a good shot, doesn't matter.
Going to have a quick look at your swing here. Can you see this, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
So I've got everyone's swing up here. Hopefully you can hear the sound as well. That sounded pretty good.
There we go.
No sound, Nick. I can't hear it, but
there's no sound. It sounded good. Did sound good. So I thought we'd just have a look at your swing zone. So how has it changed over the years, or recent years?
I would say the biggest thing probably is my arms are a lot lower.
Yeah.
Trying to exit lower than I ever used to. Trying not to get the arms raised above the shoulder plane. That's, you know, they would get off, and I would always work on getting the arms down. Really, that's the main. That was probably the biggest part.
Stand on the grid.
Yeah, stand on the grid. My tendency would be for the right arm to pass the left post impact, so 7 to kind of 9.
Yeah.
So I'm forever trying to like not let the forearms roll over. So I almost feel like when on the downswing, I almost feel like I'm holding the steering wheel and I'm turning the steering wheel to the right on the downswing, which is, you know, a bit counterintuitive because I always feel like I want to turn that steering wheel to the left on the downswing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, I could talk all day. There's probably about 13 different things in my golf swing that I don't like.
Yeah.
Always working on, like all of us. But yes, certainly understand the grid, getting the ball a little bit further back to make sure, because there's been times I've hit the ball a bit clean. I get the ball towards my left, in line with my left shoulder a lot of my irons.
Yeah.
The ball goes up in the air, and I pull the ball. So I try and really go, okay, get the ball 2 balls back, get more of a compressed ball turf strike, start the ball further to the right. And then I guess the other part, which really came from which understanding from Andy, is how the arms move around the body, and getting the right humerus to kind of, or the elbow to work around the rib cage rather than off the rib cage. Yeah. I would say that my right elbow comes off the rib cage as I go back, and I would get across the line at the top sometimes. So, growing up, we were always told to keep your right elbow in, but the right elbow being pinned to the front of the body, is very different to letting the right elbow stay close to the body but move around the body.
Yeah,
and that's been a bit of a revelation for me, to get the club on line at the top while still getting some sort of length to the backswing and not feeling pinched and narrow and no power.
So this shot here, did it draw?
Yes, so that was so I filmed that last week, and when I was working on that thing we're talking about the right arm staying lower, working around the body, and I hit a really tight, like 3-yard draw. I ripped it to 5-iron. It was like really pure, and I was just walking back to the camera, thinking, I really hope that looks good, because sometimes you hit a shot sometimes, and that's a great shot. You go back to the camera, you go, nah, but it doesn't look. I didn't get it right. It's still not where I wanted to see it. I was just walking back to the camera thinking, please let that be the one. If that's not the one, I don't know where it is. And it was good.
That's awesome. It looks good to be practicing on grass as well. I'm quite jealous of that.
The dream.
That swing of yours in the middle there, Nick. That swing of yours in the middle there, Nick, that's some of the best ball striking I've ever seen.
Yeah, this was
definitely draws. That is missed a tight draw, right?
Look at that exit.
Yeah, that was that would have been November 18, I think.
Yeah.
And I think did you take this video? I think you took this video.
I think I did. Yeah.
I think Andy was sitting in the buggy with you. And that was quite nerve-wracking with Andy watching you play a few holes. But
really?
Yeah. I was very I was quite nervous actually with Andy watching. You almost don't want to let him down,
He was pretty impressed.
I seem
to remember him saying it was like a laser show. He said it's a freaking laser show. I think he said. Show.
And there's this is Rob here. This was when
I look at my setup, I realise how tall I am. I'm bent over the ball.
Well, I think you were hitting maybe an 8 or a 9-iron here. So
yeah, short iron. Yeah.
Do you recognise the hole?
Is that something like number 11 or 12 at Marina Bay? 11?
Yeah, it's 11 at Marina Bay.
Yeah.
Have you ever played night golf, Zane?
Yeah, I played a few times in Dubai. It freaks me out a little bit because you get 4 different shadows. A bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually, because you get to see the ball like in the background, especially on the video. We did a whole video on this actually. It was quite good to just see the ball fly afterwards. But
the ball shots are really good. The putting is quite tricky, I find. Yeah. But the ball flight looks great, doesn't it, on the background?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, Zane. Have you got any players like playing any tournaments coming up? Or obviously, I know there's not much golf being played in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting to see, because there's the European Tour doing this run of 6 events now in the UK. So we're kind of waiting to see, how far out that extends and that sort of stuff. So there'll be a couple of lads in that. And then, weirdly enough, like the kind of the 1-day, 2-day tour around the UK now is now full of really good players, tour players. So they're becoming quite big time now, which is kind of odd. that everyone's getting so pumped up about a one-day tournament coming up at like one of the local courses. And you're looking down the list and you're going, God, there's tour players in there. So I'm actually playing one on Tuesday, playing one on Thursday. So I've probably I've hit balls a couple of times, probably a little bit more than I would do, just to try and get ready to compete against some decent players again.
Where's that being played?
At Woodcote Park, which is my club where I grew up at. So I haven't really got any excuses either. I'm really hoping the weather's a little bit dodgy because it gets quite tricky. So that'll hopefully blow a few of the good ball strikers out of the water. So
have you got to carry your own bag?
They haven't said that. I mean, I probably will do that, but it's gotten a bit more relaxed now. They haven't said no caddies, but yeah, the whole situation, I think, because you're allowed to spend time with a bigger group of people now, it's a bit more, as long as you're sensible, it's a bit more relaxed.
But no spectators, is that right?
No spectators, as far as I understand. I probably need to read up about the caddies. I mean, nobody wants to come caddy for me, so it wasn't really a thing I looked into.
Nick, do you want to tackle any of the questions? Because I'm
conscious of the completely time. Forgot. Yeah,
I've got them here. The first one that was asked earlier on, by Andrew Roberts, was just asking the three of us our favourite current tour swing. So Zane, I'll let you go first if you want to tell us who your favourite swing on tour is.
Tommy Fleetwood. I think he's the coast on grid, isn't he?
He's very good. I've said him in the past. I'll go with Rory. Rory's swing looks.
I would totally agree with both of you. I'll go Rose probably last year or the year before.
Okay. Someone's asking Scotty King there, Nick. You see that one? Are you on the chat now? Got how do you align your shot? My miss is right at the target. I normally stand behind the board and align my shot with the shaft of said club and pick a spot in front of the ball.
So in terms of answering that question, Scotty, I think Zane talked earlier on about how he would go out and step onto the practice area or into the course, and if he's missing in a certain direction, he would allow for that. So certainly it could be something in your technique, but the first thing I would do is probably just allow for that shot. If you're consistently missing a little bit to the right, then try and allow for that a little bit. In terms of how I line up, I stand behind the ball. I do exactly like that and sort of pick a starting line for the ball. How about yourself, Zane? How do you line up when you're out in the course?
Yeah, I tend to, I would use an intermediate target. Like 3-4 feet ahead of the ball to kind of calibrate myself to that. I don't have many shots. I would aim straight at the target, I suppose. If I'm moving it left to right, I will certainly aim quite a bit to the left. And then if I draw it, I would aim quite a bit straight to these days. But yeah, intermediate target for me. Just to calibrate everything makes it much easier.
Awesome. Steve said, does Zane's move off the ball a little?
Do I move off the ball a little bit? I think that's something I try and keep a mind on. I try to keep an eye on. Sometimes, if I'm not swinging very well, I would go a touch to the right and take it away. So I just try and I would consciously try and stay like really on it and not move off the ball. Yeah.
Another question in the chat here, guys. Why does the S&T have a bad rap? Listening to Mike Weir on the podcast, he said he didn't lose his form from S&T, but through injury.
Yeah, I listened to that one as well. I listened to that with Mark and Immelman. I think we spoke a little bit about this with Mike Navian last week, I think, with players from the system. Nobody's particularly negative about it and don't speak. I have not found anyone who speaks sort of badly of Andy and Mike. And I think that speaks volumes for them as not just as golf instructors, but as friends, and they're good people. As far as the injury thing's concerned, I mean, I think Mike Weir's injury stemmed from him hitting like a root of a tree or some kind of bad injury, and then he said he struggled because he was taking deep divots. Well, that's not Stack and Tilt's fault for taking deep divots. I think if you watch the DVDs, Mike hits these high push draw 4-irons with the angle of attack at 0. Okay, so there's no. If you understand how it all fits together, you certainly don't need to be steep. I did a video about this last week talking about the driver. Some of you may have seen it. The angle of attack is not steep just because you have your weight forward. Yeah. So I think that was a misunderstanding maybe. And I think I also said on another question, I've had this asked recently, players, Zane talked about this a second ago, like players on the range of a golf tournament, they'll try and see things through their own filter to try and just help them make sense of what's going on in their world. And that just might be his way of saying, okay, I needed to finish this and I needed to try something new. I certainly don't think it's valid that you're going to take bigger divots because you're using stack and tilt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
I would agree with that. And the injury thing, I think, is like it's saved me. I wouldn't be playing. I don't think I wouldn't play very much doing what I used to do 10 years ago. It's only through the understanding that we have these days that I'm able to keep on playing golf, really.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And there's a comment in the chat there, Zane, from Thomas Stanley. He says stack and tilt was the cure for his sciatica. So many benefits. I could go on and on. I think that's so good to hear because it does get that unfair accusation sometimes that it's actually bad for your body. And I would argue the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, exactly. I actually, when I had my wrist injury, it was probably off a bit of an info from a tour coach who told me to do something, and I did get really steep on it, and it was someone who's probably quite anti stack and tilt, anti that that way of playing golf, and that did actually caused me quite a bad injury. So if I'd known what I'd known then, I wouldn't have gone down that route, and I wouldn't have got injured. Yeah.
I think there's no sort of scientific evidence that anyone that does stack and tilt causes injury. I think it's probably the opposite. I know we've had a lot of seminars with Dr. Bush who explains the anatomy in a lot better way than we can, but there's definitely all the movements of stack and tilt are within the range of the normal body's movements. So certainly I think it helps a lot of people, if anything. So it's almost the opposite to what is people are led to believe for whatever reason. I think maybe those injuries for some people have come from them trying to interpret what stack and tilt is on their own without visiting a coach. And I'd always say it's always important to, if you can, get in contact with an instructor in your area or online. Just to finish up, guys, Zane, you've been doing a bit of online coaching, is that right, recently?
Yeah, I've done online coaching for a little while, and then during the lockdown, it kind of really ramped up, and it's become quite a big part of the business now, and I enjoy it because I've had some success from it, and I'm able to pass it on. And it's been really, really good. I enjoyed doing it, and I've been getting quite a lot of good feedback from people, because obviously you can reach people further than the 30-minute radius of where we live now. So it's really cool. You guys can be in Singapore, and I might need help, and you can check my golf swing and send it back to me. Yes, it's definitely a way to go. And what also is great about it is that when you get that lesson back, so you get a review back of your golf swing or something. I would do a video for somebody. You get that lesson over and over. When you go to the range, you can have a quick look and check it, because we know as golfers we all have a lesson, and you forget all the little details, don't you? And you don't hit it quite as well as you did in the lesson. And then when you go back, you go in with the whole story of I'm just not hitting it as well as last time. And then the coach will say to you, do you remember we said about putting your hands forward? And you're like, that's what it was. So you can kind of have that coach in your ear scenario.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so
how about you guys? Are you guys doing some now as well?
Sorry, say that again.
Yes. The question was about online. Yeah.
About
online.
Fun.
I've really enjoyed it, actually. Been something new. I've not had the time really to do it since being in Singapore much, because of I'm so busy in the centre really from day to day normally. And so it's been great. Yeah, I've got nearly 9 or 10 students now kind of on the books, which is brilliant. It's a perfect number for me, really. It's a nice balance between being able to give them the attention they need and still be able to look after normal business once it resumes. So it's been great. It's been really interesting as a coach as well to sort of change your delivery, maybe, because you can't put your hands on someone and move them how you want them to move. I think it really challenges your ability to be direct, clear, concise, very specific about what you want someone to do. And then, as you say, that person's got the message. They can play it back. And it's been much more of a back and forth, little and often type of relationship, more than a once a week or once a fortnight where you see someone for 1 hour kind of solid. and that's been interesting because it's worked well.
I think also having the system to coach with and the explanation of the grid and things like that, I think it does help in your coaching, especially online with the language you use. A lot of people I work with watch my videos, so I can always refer back to things that I've done in another video or a certain drill that I've done. So certainly it's helped me. The only worry for me is once I go back to work here in Singapore is if I'm going to have much time to do the online stuff, but because we're pretty busy in the centre. But I've really enjoyed it in the lockdown. It's kept us sort of busy as such. I know you guys are back to work now, doing a bit of coaching and a little bit of playing. We're hoping that that's going to happen very shortly, but we don't know yet. Just to finish up, guys, a couple of questions. Steve in the chat asking about his hands going down the line and turning over. I think the best drill for that is when you get a player that holds the shaft on the target side of the player, just to help them stay on the grid. The umbrella drill is good for that.
I don't know if Steve watched last week. You can go back and watch the talk we had with Mike Navian last week, because Mike shared my gears pictures, which is exactly the drill I was working on.
Yeah.
So, and that question's come up again from the Lynx Lizard, where it says Rob's arms finish much higher at P10. I just saw that when I was watching those 3 swings, and that's something I really struggle with. My arms getting off the grid 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
So I use that drill a lot. My arms need to finish much lower. So Steve, that's the drill. Figure that one out, because that will help a lot if you can do that drill.
And Yumi's just joined the call, so she's a bit late. But hi, Yumi. Hope you're all right.
She's had a lay-in. She's had Kobe's let her stay in bed today.
To be fair, it's early morning there on the West Coast. But anyway, guys, really enjoyed chatting to you, Zane. It was really great to have you on. I really appreciate you taking time to come and chat to us. I know you're a busy guy, so I really do appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much. I will post some links for your social media and online coaching business on the chat, if you don't mind, in the description. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Enjoyed catching up with you boys right from across the world.
Well, hopefully one day we'll get to meet in person and maybe play some golf. You never know.
Yeah, go and hit some nice tight draws.
I don't want to film up on the course.
I was going to say, I'm not having my swing film next to Zane's ever, never, ever.
Don't remember that. I saw that move. That was a good move you got on that one.
Right, cheers, guys. Thanks everyone watching. Thanks for your comments. We'll see you again soon.
Good to catch up, guys. See ya.
Cheers,
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Zane.